Tommy slammed the emergency stop button. The elevator jerked and halted between floors. He ripped the emergency phone from the panel and dropped it on the floor. 3 men. 2 square meters. No exits. He looked at Bruce Lee and said, "Nowhere to run, little man." Bruce looked back at him and said, "I know. Perfect." Hong Kong Peninsula Hotel, 1972. Bruce Lee had been in meetings with film executives since 3 in the afternoon. 3 films on the table. Everything concluded well. By 8:47 in the evening he was walking through the lobby toward the elevator bank, polished shoes on marble floors, gray suit, tie straight, the composed exit of someone who had done what needed doing and was now moving toward rest. He pressed the up button. Waited. Adjusted his cufflinks. The right one was slightly loose. He fixed it. The elevator doors opened. Interior mirrored, empty, 2 meters by 2 meters. He stepped in and pressed 18. The doors began closing. A large hand blocked the sensor. Doors reopened. 3 men stepped in. The first was 6'4", 240 pounds, built in the specific way of someone who had absorbed many years of contact at a professional level, cauliflower ear, nose that had healed at an angle, hands with the enlarged knuckles of a man who had hit things seriously for a long time. He was looking at Bruce with the recognition of someone placing a face they know from a context they are revising. The second was shorter and wider, 5'11", heavy-shouldered, the dense build of a wrestler. Jeans, leather jacket, the faint smell of beer that suggested the evening had begun several hours earlier. The third was lean and quick-looking. A kickboxer's build. Economical, alert. The elevator filled. Bruce moved to the back corner without making the movement obvious. The doors closed. The space, which had been practical and efficient when he was alone in it, was now small. "You're Bruce Lee," the big one said. American accent, the specific vowels of Northern California. Bruce nodded politely. The man elbowed the wrestler. "Boys. Celebrity." The other 2 smirked. "I'm Tommy. Pro boxer." He pointed at the others in turn. "Rick. Danny." Bruce said. Politely. He pressed 18 again, already lit. He wanted this elevator to move. Floor 3. 4. Tommy stepped closer. Beer breath close. "You really fight or just movie stuff?" "I train," Bruce said. Tommy laughed. Deep, mocking, designed to fill the space. Rick and Danny joined it. Floor 6. 7. 8. "They say Wing Chun only works up close," Tommy said. "But you're small." "What are you, 5'7"? 5'8", Bruce said. "Right. 5'8". "Rick, he's tiny." Bruce kept his hands loose at his sides. Relaxed. Not performing relaxation, actually there. Floor 9. 10. 11. Tommy moved closer. Testing the proximity. "I've fought Asians before. Quick little guys but no power. All that speed won't matter against a real puncher." Bruce did not respond. Not from restraint, from the accurate assessment that there was nothing useful to say. Floor 12. "We could find out right here," Tommy said. His smile had thinned. Rick and Danny shifted with the specific energy of people who wanted to watch something happen. Floor 13. 14. Tommy reached past Bruce and slammed the stop button. The elevator jerked. Emergency light flashed red. The normal lights flickered once and settled. Tommy took the emergency phone from its panel and dropped it on the floor in one motion. Then he turned back. Rick moved behind Bruce, blocking the panel. Danny shifted left, cutting the angle. Tommy took the space ahead, most of the remaining room, dead center. Bruce was in the corner. 3 men surrounding him. No exits. No space. Tommy spread his arms and grinned. "Here's the thing, little man. Boxers need space. A ring. Room to move." He bounced lightly on the balls of his feet, the unconscious habit of someone whose body had been trained to do this in the moments before engagement. "You need closeness. Wing Chun. Can't really move. Can't use that speed. Nowhere to run." Rick and Danny laughed. Tommy stepped forward. "So what are you going to do?" Bruce surveyed all 3. Tommy, Rick, Danny, back to Tommy. He was not performing calm. He was calm. In the specific way of someone who had just been handed an advantage and recognized it. Wing Chun was not a system developed in open spaces. It was not a system developed for rings or dojos or fields. It was developed in Guangzhou, in the crowded narrow streets and small apartments of a dense city, by practitioners who needed something that functioned when there was no room to move. High kicks required space. Wide hooks required space. A boxer's jab required the range to build its arc. 2 meters required none of these things. 2 meters was Wing Chun's native territory. Tommy had not trapped Bruce Lee. He had placed him in the environment Bruce Lee had been training for. 5 seconds of silence. Tommy waited for panic and found stillness. What? Scared? No, Bruce said quietly. Just deciding which of you goes first. Tommy's grin dropped. He threw the jab. A pro boxer's jab was the fastest single strike in the boxing repertoire, the strike with the shortest path, the most repetition behind it, the one that boxers could throw at speed while everything else was still loading. Tommy's jab was fast. Bruce did not duck or block. He stepped inside it. One step forward, closing the distance that the jab required, moving into the range where the arm was still extending and had not built force. The jab passed over his left shoulder. He felt the wind of it against his ear. He was now inside Tommy's reach. Wing Chun range. His left hand slapped down on Tommy's extended arm, controlling it, trapping it, preventing retraction. His right hand struck the jaw. Pop. Sharp. Clean. Compact, 6 inches of travel, the full kinetic chain behind it. Tommy's head snapped back. The mirrored wall caught it. Glass shook but did not break. His eyes lost focus for a moment, the specific brief vacancy of someone whose brain has just received unexpected input. The entire exchange had taken slightly more than 1 second. Rick and Danny had not processed what they were watching. Wing Chun's principle, attack until the threat is neutralized. Bruce did not wait. Chain punches, rapid, mechanical, precise, each one traveling the center line, each one arriving before the previous one could be responded to. In open space, a defender could move away, could circle, could use footwork to manage the pressure. In 2 meters with a wall behind you, there was nowhere to go. Bridge of nose. Cartilage gave way. Blood began. Left cheekbone. Immediate swelling, the specific fast swelling of facial bone absorbing direct impact. Right temple. Tommy's eyes rolled back briefly. Solar plexus. The air left in a single expelled sound. Tommy's boxing guard was designed for the range that boxing was designed for. Inside it, his arms were wrong, his positioning was wrong, the defensive response his training had built was looking for attacks at a range that was no longer present. He slumped against the wall. Bruce unclenched his hands. Fingers relaxed. The chain ended. He looked at Rick and Danny. Rick was on the floor, knee at an angle that communicated he had attempted to grab Bruce and had received the specific response to that attempt. His knee had been addressed at the joint in the direction joints were not designed to travel. Danny was sitting against the opposite wall. He had not attacked. He was sitting with his back to the mirror and his hands visible, breathing. Jesus, Danny said. His voice shook. You really are. He stopped. Bruce waited. We're sorry, Danny said. Okay? We're sorry. Tommy was drunk. We were all. He stopped again. Bruce said nothing. Danny looked up. His voice dropped. Are you going to? Bruce looked at Rick, who was making a continuous low sound. He looked at Tommy, blood on his chin, semi-conscious, head against the mirrored wall. He looked at Danny. You've been punished enough. Danny exhaled. Thank you, Bruce. Don't thank me, Bruce said. Thank your hospital. He moved to the panel. The stop button was still depressed, red light on. The emergency phone cord lay on the floor. He stepped carefully over Rick's leg. Rick's sound became louder for a moment. Bruce pressed the stop button again. The elevator moved. Floor 15. 16. Rick groaned at each vibration. 17. Bruce straightened his tie. Rick's grip during the grappling attempt had pulled it sideways. He smoothed the collar, checked the jacket. Wrinkled where Rick's hands had grabbed fabric. He adjusted what he could adjust. 18. The doors opened. Danny called from inside the elevator. Bruce stopped. Doors tried to close. He let the sensor hold them. What do we tell the hotel? Bruce turned. Come. Factual. Tell them you fell. All 3 of you. Elevator floor slippery. It happens. Danny frowned. They won't believe that. Bruce looked at him. Or tell them Bruce Lee defended himself. See which story keeps you out of jail for assault. Danny went quiet. Bruce stepped into the hallway. The doors closed. Red carpet. Gold sconces. Warm light. The quiet of an expensive hotel at 9 in the evening, completely indifferent to what had just occurred 1 floor below in a stopped elevator between floors 17 and 18. He walked toward room 1823. His hands were steady. The adrenaline had not yet finished processing. He took the key card from his pocket. Slid it. Green light. He stepped inside and closed the door and engaged the chain lock. Stood still. Let the quiet settle. In the bathroom mirror, 1 hair had fallen across his forehead. He fixed it. Examined the jacket, wrinkled at the shoulders from Rick's grip, fabric pulled from both sides. He took it off and hung it on the chair back. Draped the tie across the armrest. Unbuttoned the collar. Sat on the edge of the bed. His hands shook slightly. The body's processing. The adrenaline releasing its residual. He breathed. In through the nose. Count of 4. Out through the mouth. Count of 4. Repeated until the shaking stopped. Nowhere to run. A faint expression moved across his face. Not quite a smile. He hadn't needed to. The next morning Bruce sat in the hotel restaurant with tea and a newspaper. A waiter approached. Nervous quality in his movement. Mr. Lee, everything okay last night? Bruce looked up. Fine. Why? The waiter hesitated. 3 men taken to hospital from the hotel. Injuries. Bruce set the newspaper down. Paused. Nodded. Elevator accident. Elevators can be dangerous. He picked up his tea. Yes, the waiter said. Very dangerous. He walked away without asking further questions. 1 week later. Los Angeles. Bruce's school. Danny, the kickboxer from the elevator, was sitting in the back row. He had flown from Hong Kong to Los Angeles. He had called through a contact, explained who he was and what had happened, and asked if he could come and learn. Bruce had said yes. Now Bruce stood at the front of the room explaining what Tommy had gotten right and what Tommy had gotten wrong. Tommy said boxers need space. He was right. He walked while he talked. Hands gesturing. Muhammad Ali needs a ring. Room to move, to dance, to establish his jab from distance. Take that away and he's less effective. Every system has a range where it's optimal and ranges where it's limited. He walked to the wall and stood with his back to it, inches from the surface. Traditional Wing Chun was developed in Guangzhou. Crowded city. Narrow streets. Small apartments. Students living 4 people in one room. No space for high kicks or wide hooks. So Wing Chun became efficient. Direct. Economical. Every movement does exactly what it needs to do and nothing else. He looked at Danny. Try throwing your Muay Thai kicks in this corner. Danny stood and tried. The wall was immediately behind him. No extension available. The kick existed in his intention but not in the space. Now punch. Boxing style. Danny tried. No room to wind up. The punch existed but without the distance to build force. Now watch. Bruce demonstrated from the same position. Trapping hands. Chain punches. Straight blast. Each technique compact, functional, complete in the space available. Phone booth range. Elevator range. Where most strikers struggle. Where Wing Chun thrives. Danny nodded slowly. I learned that the hard way. The class laughed. Danny was a good sport about it. The principle Bruce was teaching was not specific to Wing Chun. It was the same principle the entire development of Jeet Kune Do had been built around. Every system was optimized for something. The question was never which system was best. The question was which system was best for this situation, this range, this constraint, this opponent. A boxer in a boxing ring with room to move was formidable. A boxer in a 2-meter elevator without room to extend his jab was fighting with tools designed for a context that no longer existed. Bruce had been teaching this for years. The elevator had provided an unusual demonstration. Tommy had handed Bruce the context and called it a trap. Be like water, Bruce had written. People heard this as philosophy. As something spiritual and abstract. It was practical. Water in a wide river spread gently, finding its natural level. Water in a narrow pipe gained pressure, became forceful. That elevator was a narrow pipe. Tommy had wanted a wide river, room to move, space to operate, the ring that his 20 years of boxing had been built for. He got a narrow pipe. He could not adapt. Bruce could. That was the difference. In a 1990s interview, Tommy, older, the sharp edge of that night receded into something he had processed across decades, talked about what had happened. He laughed. Not with amusement. The specific bitter sound of someone who had genuinely learned something from an experience they would rather not have had. Yeah, I was that guy in the elevator. Thought I had him trapped. He paused. He didn't need to run. I needed to run. I was in my element, wide open space, right? Room to move. Except I wasn't in my element. I was in his. I just didn't know it until it was already over. What he had articulated, without using the vocabulary, was the principle that made Bruce Lee's approach different from any single system practitioner. Most fighters trained for their system's optimal range and hoped every confrontation would occur at that range. They trained for the wide river and hoped the world would provide it. Bruce trained for the principle that the range could not be controlled and therefore the practitioner had to be complete at every range. The elevator had not surprised him. Nothing about it had been disadvantageous. 2 meters was a range he had trained for since he was 13 years old on a rooftop in Kowloon. Tommy's mistake was believing that removing space removed options. It removed Tommy's options. It gave Bruce his. Danny became a regular student. He stayed in Los Angeles for 3 months, returning to Hong Kong with the beginning of an education that the elevator had made him ready to receive. He told people back in Hong Kong about Bruce's teaching, about the demonstration of Wing Chun in the corner against the wall, about the explanation of range, about the principle underneath the technique. Some people asked about the elevator. Danny said, "I was there. Everything you've heard is probably an understatement." He always said this with the specific tone of someone who had been present for something and who had the scar tissue of direct experience rather than second-hand account. Bruce Lee spent the years after 1966 building what would become Jeet Kune Do, the synthesis of everything he had studied, stripped of everything that was system-dependent rather than principle-dependent. The elevator was not an advertisement for Wing Chun. It was an advertisement for the principle that systems had ranges, and the practitioner who understood ranges rather than simply mastering systems was the practitioner who could function in any context. He wrote, "Adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is specifically your own." An elevator was a context. Tommy brought a system designed for a different context. Bruce brought a principle that adapted to any context. At 2 meters, the principle was Wing Chun. In a larger space, it might have been something else. In a grappling exchange, which Jean Labelle had demonstrated, it was the anti-grappling defense that Jean had taught him and that he had drilled for 6 months. The point was never the technique. The point was the adaptability. The elevator gave Tommy what he thought was an advantage and gave Bruce what Tommy did not understand he was giving. Nowhere to run. For Tommy, that meant no escape. For Bruce, it meant no distance. No space to maintain. No range management required. Just the range he had been training for since he was a teenager in the crowded streets of a dense city where the space to fight was always small. Tommy had been right about one thing. He had just misunderstood what it meant.